I have a friend, a colleague, a fellow travel content creator who grew up driving combine harvesters on a farm in a town of 12 people in Saskatchewan. On her 30th birthday, she had already visited all 7 continents. If I had to guess which one of the following experiences was more terrifying, trying to explain to international airport security why your luggage was setting off all kinds of alarms because of dust from a mine a kilometer underground, or trekking 120 kilometers alone in the boreal forest and running into bears.
And then I did encounter 3 bears in the dark at night by myself. It was a mom and 2 cubs. I couldn't tell until afterwards when I was safe, but essentially it was a triangle of a mom and her 2 cubs, and I walked into it not knowing.
All I know is that I have a term for this level of anxiety, and it's called shitting bricks. In this episode, we're chatting with the creator of the Lost Girl Guide to Finding the World, Ashlyn George, and we're talking everything from the Athabasca sand dunes to the nutrient potash mine, crazy outdoor adventures like winter camping and whitewater rafting, all the way to reflecting on our incredible, humbling experience at Kaniasik culture camps. I think it's time we all get comfortable with being very uncomfortable.
You're listening to the Rudderless Travel podcast, a podcast about purposeful travel, sharing inspirational stories, and unlocking a destination's secrets.
Hey, my name is Christopher Rudder, an award-winning travel content creator and expert with Rudderless Media. In the last episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Kevin Lewis, Zachary Boyden, and Darla Campbell about my incredible Indigenous hands-on learning experience over at Kaniasik culture camps in Saskatchewan. It's a closer look at what it takes to live off the land all year round, and the passing of the knowledge to the next generation, one of the most memorable experiences I ever had. I bring this up because it's where I first met Ashlyn, and it's experiences like this that kind of bond people forever, but during that time, our group really got to know each other, and I really got to know Ashlyn. So, how you doing?
I'm so good. I'm so excited to be on the podcast.
I'm so excited to have you here. So, for anyone who hasn't encountered the Lost Girl's Guide to Finding the World, briefly tell us what your core mission is and what you're trying to accomplish through your unique brand of adventure travel.
Yeah, so I focus on outdoor adventure travel. This is my personal passion. So I'm always sharing about the things I love to see and do and explore. But I want to make it accessible for others as well if they're curious. So I really like to share my adventures for inspiration, but then provide kind of an educational component where I give you tips and tricks so you can go out and have similar adventures too.
I like that. And you're so good at that too. So like me, these days, you're an award-winning... Yeah, just shamelessly plug. Anyway, sorry. You're an award-winning adventure writer. Congratulations, by the way, on the last award. But your story starts on a grain farm. And I remember these conversations as well, because we were hiking, and you were going through all these details about what actually happens on a farm. And I learned so much. And I think part of it is because I absolutely love equipment and tech and technology and machines and things like that. So I was completely fascinated by that whole conversation. So what was it about growing up on a farm, driving those combines, working the harvest, that developed the specific kind of work ethic, discipline, and self-reliance that is essential for surviving solo adventures in the backcountry?
You know, I didn't realize how unique it was to grow up on a grain farm because that's all I ever knew as a kid. And I grew up in a small community. The town that I'm from has about 11 people in it. I went to the neighboring town, which has 1,000 people. So very rural, very small, and very country. And it was all just normal for us. But I grew up, my dad is such a hardworking man. He's a farmer. My mom helped on the farm too, but she also had a full-time job. She raised 4 of us kids. And I watched my dad work so hard. And when I was a kid, I didn't think of him as an entrepreneur, but that's exactly what he is. And as I've grown as an adult too, the knowledge and the effort and the time and the love and care my dad puts into growing something on the land is really incredible. There's a lot of changing technology in farming too. So, needing to stay relevant, updating your equipment, the technology behind it, there's a lot of components to it. And I think that's what I love the most is it's really humble, hard work, but at the same time, it's really tech focused too. And I have a lot of those similar interests. And I think I've carried that into my career as a travel writer, and adventurer, and the confidence to do those things.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, the hard work piece, especially because anyone who knows about running a blog, there's like a million things going on there and creating content and all that stuff. But is there anything that's connected to like growing up on a farm specifically, like the wilderness of it that made you always kind of love the wilderness? Or you know what I'm trying to
You know what?
say?
Oddly enough, no. So because we're tied to the land, especially it's busy in the summer months, we didn't always have the opportunity to get away and go do things. I discovered hiking and travel, once I moved into university and as an adult, just because we didn't focus on those opportunities. That being said, I was always outdoors, playing outside, running through the trees in our farmyard, helping in the garden. We had a massive garden. And so I experienced the outdoors in a different way than I do now. And I think I've just always really valued being outside regardless of how that looks.
Mm. Because it leads into my next question. So, as you said, you were born in a town with only 12, was it 12 people?
About that.
And it and is this including you and your siblings and your parents, or is that aside from you? Or is it including you? Is your whole family too?
It's about that. So this is really funny actually. There's only 5 total, and Leslie is the name of the town. 3 that run direction, 2 that run the other. And on this one street, at one point in time, there was my aunt and uncle lived there. Next door was my grandma's house. Next door was where, like, my first few years of life, we were born and raised. And then my brother bought the house next door to that. And then there was the church next door after that, and that was the whole street. That was it. So, yeah, very, very small.
So, basically, the town is your family.
A little bit of it, yes.
I love that. That's so cool. Okay, so I was going to ask you about feeling isolated, but then it hit me because I'm from Toronto, the biggest city in Canada, with like 6 million people, and even here you can feel isolated. Like, I mean, you at least know who your neighbors are. I kind of know who lives down the hall from me in my condo. Like, I know their names, so it's interesting, but I wonder if there's a connection with growing up in the small town. Did it shape your desire to seek out those 60 plus countries and all 7 continents? Were you trying to escape, or was it, a form of purposeful exploration?
I don't think I was trying to escape. I think I was more so just insatiably curious, and I knew there was more out there and I wanted more. And the interesting thing is there are a lot of careers that people can just step into, but farming is not one of them. It's really expensive, challenging, and there's a lot of knowledge you need to have. And you can't just, I mean, you can go to school for agriculture, but you can't really go to school to be a farmer. So I look at the upbringing that I had as so unique and so different to many other careers people have. But then I wanted to go see what else the world could offer because I grew up in a farming community knowing farming, and then I wanted to see what else was out there. And I think my desire for travel didn't really kick in until after university. I remember my best friend, while we were going through classes together in university, talked about doing an exchange to Australia as a student, and she was curious and excited about it. And I remember thinking, "What? No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go anywhere. Like I'm good right here, thanks." But I had moved from a small town to a big city, a bigger city of about a quarter million people. Um and I was okay with just figuring things out as I was adulting from there. And so it's really funny that that was my reaction to travel while I was taking classes. But when I finished university, I didn't feel ready to start a career. I have a background in education. And I didn't feel like I was ready to step into the classroom. And travel attracted me. I've had a bucket list since I was probably 15 years old. And one of the things on my bucket list was chasing the sun for a year. Here in Saskatchewan, we get really long, cold winters, and I wanted to see like green leaves and sunshine for 365 days. And that was kind of this launching off point for me to go travel, because I was like, well, I got to go for 6 months. And that was like the tip of the iceberg.
Ooh, I love that so much. That's so cool. What I will say is that with Saskatchewan, um, and it's funny because we're gonna lean into Saskatchewan in a second, but what I remember, everything was sort of flat, and I could see the sun no matter where I was standing. So I'm just gonna put that out there. So I mean, I
Great
really didn't
sunsets
think.
and sunrises.
Yeah, 1000%. And you could actually see the storm coming from a mile away too, which is actually quite cool.
Yep.
I've never quite seen that. So that was just cool. I mean, not to digress too much, but of course I like to talk, so I'm going to digress. But yeah, when I first was in Saskatchewan, this actually started in Manitoba. Because when I first was coming over from Ontario into Manitoba, everything just changed when I was on a road trip once, and everything just became flat. I was like, "What the hell is going on?" And then when I got into Saskatchewan, I was like, "What the hell is this?"
It
And it was
never
kind of
ends.
unnerving. It never ends. It's like those drawings that I used to draw when I was in school, not paying attention to math class, when they would draw the line heading into the horizon. It looks exactly like that. And so I was just kinda like, this like, I don't know if I'd be able to drive on this forever, and it was kinda unnerving for me because there's no hills, no mountains. There's a few dips, I know where they are, but there's just a little bit, and I was just kinda, like, shocked. But then when a storm came or when the night sky was there, then I was like, "This is freaking beautiful," because you could really see the stars. It's almost like you're living under a snow globe, and it's such an incredible thing to see. So, my whole views have changed on that now.
I'm
So
glad to hear that. That's what I love to share, is the unexpected from the province.
But I have a question about Saskatchewan because you're not out of the woods yet.
Travel is about the gorgeous feeling of teetering in the unknown. Anthony Bourdain.
As I mentioned earlier, we had the pleasure of sharing that unforgettable experience at Kaniasik culture camps. You often mention traveling with purpose and helping communities grow from the ground up. So thinking back to that experience, what was the most meaningful lesson or connection you took away from the teachings that reinforce your commitment to seeking out authentic Indigenous experiences?
So I've spent a lot of time traveling solo, but then I've also been lucky to travel with loved ones, friends, family, new friends, and I can be in the most amazing place in the world, but it is always better when I share it with somebody. And so for me, when I have incredible experiences, whether across the world or here at home, they're most often rooted in other people and community and connecting with others. And so when I look at our experience that we shared at Kaniasik Culture Camp, it was about everybody who was participating from all sides of it as well. So not only did you have this wonderful Indigenous community who is not only passionate and excited and happy to share their knowledge and their culture with you and so open about it, I happened to be there with a group of people who were really receptive and curious to learning and understanding more. And we only, as a society, get better by sharing, depending on and relying on one another. So the most powerful travel experiences of my life are always shared with others and making a connection around that. Because there's a lot that happens in this world, but the human connection is like something that I think transcends so many experiences.
1000%. Yeah, no, that's such a great answer. I love that. And I absolutely 1000% agree with you because that's kind of why I started with that, because Uh, of course, what we were doing was extremely memorable. I mean, I've never done any of those things before, quite literally none of it. So not only was it like a unique learning experience, it was also something that I'm passionate about because I absolutely love my Indigenous friends. So anytime I get to hang out with them is like a complete, you know, I love it because you learn so much and everything has a meaning and a purpose, and I love that so much. But you're right. It's when we were actually hanging out together and kind of encouraging each other or cheering each other on, or you got that, or just when we were walking through the forest and just talking and getting to know each other and bouncing around, talking to each other. You're right. Like sharing those moments with people, like it really bonds people for sure. And you're absolutely right. It was one of the most memorable things is not just the experience, but actually hanging out with you and everyone else. So I completely agree with that. Now we're going to talk about Saskatchewan. We have mutual friends, and I'm going to give a shout out to Jody. I love Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
And for those listening and watching, Jody is the tourism board rep. She's amazing. So I'm going to give her a plug. But that said, every time I mention to someone that I'm going to Saskatchewan, the reaction is typically, why? I've created videos and articles about Regina and Saskatoon, and someone posted a comment, the best thing to do in Saskatchewan is leave. And I felt like, what? Like, why are people? They said the same thing about Winnipeg too, mind you.
Yes.
So I'm just kind of like, maybe because I'm a travel content creator, I'm able to find the beauty in places. But I just thought that that comment was just like, you're right to have your feelings, but that's a little harsh. So as a Saskatchewanian, does your time traveling and content creating in and for Saskatchewan give you a unique view that hopefully might change how people usually see the province?
I hope so. That's my intention. There sometimes can be a more negative opinion about from people about the province, and I have several thoughts about it. First off, one of the things I say about Saskatchewan is we're an active travel province. So we're not like Alberta with the mountains where you just drive up and you're like, wow, this is pretty incredible, because it is. In Saskatchewan, if you're willing to take the time and put the effort in, I promise you, you will be rewarded in the experiences you have. But you have to put the work in. And I do believe that most things in life, they're most rewarding when you have to put a little effort into it, right? When it's not just super easy. And so that's what I often tell people is you have to go out and you have to put time and effort in. And there are so many beautiful and wonderful things to see here. Our strengths lie in the outdoors and our small communities. You can go into any small community in Saskatchewan, and first off, they're going to know that you're not a local, but they're probably going to ask what you're doing there. And then they're going to be so curious and excited that you decided to stop in at their coffee shop, at their restaurant. And then they're going to tell you some really neat things to check out while you're there. And it may not be mountains, but there's value in a variety of different types of experiences. It doesn't have to be the most amazing experience of your life every time.
Yeah, I agree with that. And sometimes it's not always about the prettiest places. It's really it's going back to what you said earlier. It always comes back to the people because, I think who said this? I think it was Kevin Hart said this. He said that you could be eating a hot dog, right? But if you're eating it with someone that's an amazing person, then that's going to be the best hot dog ever. So I feel like it's the same way. Not that I'm saying Saskatchewan is a hot dog. I mean, I'm just, I mean, it is a long province, but I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that. But yeah, it really is the people because I think you're based in Saskatoon now. So, yeah, I mean, every coffee shop that I went into, everywhere that I went, everybody was just, you're right. They were just so happy that you're there. And you're like, you chose to visit us? What? And every single place, whether I was eating food or going into a chocolate spot or wherever it was, and the other thing too is so there's a lot of indigenous experiences there as well, like Waniskewen, and so I mean, it's just like a really cool place, and of course the nature, which we'll dive into in a second. But yeah, you're right. Saskatchewan, for those who are thinking like that, dig a little deeper, put in a little bit of work, and you'll find the beauty. You will uncover it, and this probably explains why I'm not really a beach person, because that's easy. I go to the beach and lie down. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, but I'm one kind of person that wants to go and explore. Like I can't just sit here all day and do nothing. I need to go and explore. If I need to climb this mountain or go down this street, or I need to go and explore. So I completely feel that 1,000%.
If you want to dive deeper into this story, visit us over at rudderlesstravel.com/podcasts.
All right, let's talk about the Athabasca sand dunes. It's one of your top 3 favorite outdoor spots, I think, and they are the most northerly dunes in the world. For the listeners and viewers, can you describe the immense logistical challenge, because I remember this, of simply getting there, and then what makes the journey itself a true expedition?
So the Athabasca sand dunes are very remote. They're in the northwest corner of the province, and there are no roads that lead here. So you can't just drive to them. But driving is part of this. So let me see if I can remember this all exactly. From Saskatoon, it is a 13-and-a-half-hour drive north to a community called Stony Rapids. And the majority of this is not on paved highway. So at about the 5-hour mark, 500-kilometer mark, it turns into gravel roads. But you should not only pack 1 spare tire, you should pack 2 spare tires, and honestly, you could probably pack a 3rd. I've done this road a couple times now. Every time we've had a flat tire, and one time we've had 2 flat tires. There's no cell service. There are very few communities along the way. There's a couple like hunting or fishing lodges, and there's like a gas station or 2, but otherwise, like, this is remote. So you drive 13-and-a-half hours north, and then from there, you have to charter a float plane to get you access to the sand dunes for your second step. It's about an 1.5-hour flight by float plane. If you have a boat, you could boat there, but we didn't have access to one, and there's no commercial option. So we flew across the lake, and then you land on the lake, and then you get out of the airplane, and you're like tossing out your luggage in the lake onto the shoreline, and you hope there's not a lot of waves. And then that's like step 2. Step 3, because now you're in the wilderness. There is nothing out here. There are like neighboring Stony Rapids, and then Uranium City is across the lake to the north. But there are very few communities along this lake. And the lake is considered an inland sea. It is that large. And so then you get to the shoreline of Lake Athabasca, and then you have to camp, and you're in pure wilderness. Again, no cell service. But the sand dunes are still a little bit far from where you are, depending where you get dropped off. So for us, we ended up hiking 13 kilometers through the sand with our backpacks. We set up along the William River and camped there overnight. And then to get to the dunes, the next day, we had to ford the river on foot. So we had to make sure that we could like try and figure out a place where we could walk across it. I had tech gear, so I didn't want to be like getting that wet. So you had to ford the river, and then you still had a 5-kilometer hike through the sand to get to the sand dune. So it's a bit of an adventure. And one of the trickiest, most complicated parts about all of this is because the lake is so large, the winds that whip up on the water can be incredible. And if you start to get whitecaps, your float plane can't land. So not only could it maybe not land to drop you off, it might not be able to land to come pick you back up. So you could be windbound and shorebound for days beyond when you like wanted to be out there, because they can't come get you until the wind dies down. And it can take like a day or 2, up to a week sometimes, where you could get shorebound. This is true wilderness. This is definitely an expedition to get out there. And you do need to have the right equipment and the skills and the knowledge when you're out there too. Because yeah, it is very remote.
I don't even know what to say about that. I remember you explaining it to me, and I was like, what the? Oh. Okay. I have like other questions now. I'm gonna ask you about your impressions when you stepped out on the dunes. What was it that feeling like in the Sahara Desert? But hold on one second.
Yep.
Okay, so you talked about packing gear. So now I need to know, like, what kind of gear are you packing in order to do this? Because you just mentioned that if there's whitecaps, then maybe plane ain't coming to get you. So that means that you could be potentially stuck there for some extra days. So how are you preparing for that? What are you packing? Are you including living off the land? Like, how does that work?
So for this particular trip, we were out there for about 9 to 10 days, and we packed extra food with us. We didn't bring guns. We don't usually travel that way, and none of us are major hunters that were like in our group. So we just planned for everything. We flew in with canoes as well. We strapped 3 canoes to the float plane, and then we had our hiking gear. So we kind of had like a main camp set up on like the shoreline, and then we had our backpacking gear that we could take when we moved over to the William River to get closer to the sand dunes. And so we also had bear barrels with us because there's lots of brown bears in the area, and we wanted to make sure that they wouldn't get into our food cache while we were away at our river camp. So we had everything in our bear barrels. We would tuck it under the canoes, and we just made sure that we brought extra food for several days and that we were prepared in case we were windbound. But we weren't, so it all worked out.
Okay. So I don't think I'm gonna get past this question. Okay, so what so just for the listeners and the viewers, like what is a bear barrel? Like I have an idea what it might be. It's a cool name for actual beer that you drink, but what does it look like? What is it? Is it like an actual barrel or
Yeah.
and the
It's usually blue. It's a big round barrel. They do come in different sizes depending on your trip. There's a smaller one and a larger one. Often they're outfitted with a harness on the exterior of the plastic so you can carry it like a backpack. And it is a big round plastic barrel, and it has a lid on top that seals tightly. Like there's an actual like lever that you tighten it that keeps it fully sealed. I mean, it's not 100% perfect. A bear, if it was determined enough, could get into your food, but for the most part, you can keep all of your stuff dry and you can keep it safe from bears. And lots of canoe trippers use this as well. It's very popular for canoeists.
I knew that talking with you was gonna be like an educational thing for sure. But you know which animal can probably get through that? A raccoon.
You know what? I actually think they would be raccoon safe too. They do have their
Really?
like very like dexterous hands, but to pull the metal lever to
Okay.
open it up, it actually takes a bit of effort. So yeah, I think
I was I mean, I'm sort of joking, but I in Toronto, our raccoons can get anything. You probably heard that story about the raccoon that broke into Pearson International Airport. So just saying that,
you honestly never know. With wildlife, anything goes with them. They're resourceful.
fair, fair enough. Okay, so when you finally step onto those dunes, which you described as feeling like the Sahara Desert, what was the overwhelming emotional experience, and what did it say about Saskatchewan, stereotyped as just a flat prairie?
When I show people photos of the Athabasca sand dunes, they don't believe me that that is Saskatchewan. It looks like the Sahara Desert. So the dunes, it's not a desert. They are dunes because there's moisture there, and it is a mix of forest and sections of like vast tracts of sand and gravel pavement. The dunes in particular that are the largest are called the William Dunes, and they're about 35 meters high, so over 100 feet. And they run north to south, and they run in this long strip along the horizon. And when you climb up one and you stand at the top of it and you look north to Lake Athabasca and you look south and you just see more dunes, more sand, and a little bit of forest, it is just absolutely incredible. And I think that feeling is heightened by the effort that it takes to get there. You don't just drive out there and be like, this is beautiful. We put so much effort in. And I was very grateful. The people I was with, we were there in like the height of summer, really long summer days. And the people I was with were game to hike later in the day so we could stay for sunset on the dunes, knowing we would be hiking back at probably like, we got back at about 1 in the morning. And so to sit on top of the dunes, experience sunset, because you can see forever. You can see for miles and miles and miles. And I think the cherry on top of it all is in an area where the wind is notorious. It was absolutely calm. There was like hardly a breath of wind. So you didn't have that like experience of getting sandblasted as the wind's blowing it all around you. We actually carried Coronas out with us to drink. And so we actually had one and we shared it as a group. That was like our thing we did this whole time. And so we shared this beer, we watched sunset, we had snacks. I was running around taking photos like a crazy person. And it was just incredible because nobody ever believes me that this is here in our province. It's so unexpected and it's so amazing.
Wow. That's amazing. I love that. Coronas. Make sure you pack the Coronas. Don't want to be out in the wilderness without our drinks.
We have a charcuterie board set up. We have like afternoon cocktails and snacks.
Nice.
And so like, yeah, I eat better when we go camping with my friend Ron, who helped organize all of this, than I do at home. It's incredible.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. So if I remember correctly, you took your mother and I
Yes.
guess this friend Ron, right? On this bucket list trip. So, of course, with your mom, bringing your mom on that, I mean, that's amazing. Next level definition of building memories for sure. But then another thought came to my mind, and that's choosing the wrong person to travel with can ruin a trip. And I say this because I feel that part of the beauty of travel is, it will at times test your resolve. So, how does sharing a challenging, unique experience like this with family and friends change the dynamic compared to your solo expeditions?
This will forever be one of the best trips I have ever taken in my entire life because of how badly I wanted to go there, how challenging it is to make it happen, how wonderful the weather was, and the amazing people I got to share the experience with. So when my mom and I went, she was 69 at the time, and we are sleeping in the sand in a tent. We're canoeing, we're hiking. She's never been backcountry hiking. She's never been backcountry camping. This was all new for her, but I know my mom. I get a lot of my personality traits from her. She's so curious. She's up for anything and she's so capable. And I knew she would be able to do all of the adventures we were up to. And I think that really added to the trip is seeing my mom experiencing these things for the first time in a space that is my space, right? Outdoor adventure is something that I'm skilled at and I excel at. And to share that with my mom and to show her you can do this too and you're capable, that was extraordinary. And my friend Ron and I, we go on lots of these backcountry trips. He's taught me so much as well, both whitewater canoeing, how to make the most amazing meals backcountry camping. In fact, it was Canada Day and my mom is helping Ron cook an upside down pineapple cake over the campfire on the beach with a sunset that never ends because it hardly dips below the horizon. And it's moments like that that you will never forget. And I remember this moment too. Mom and I were literally bathing in the river, giggling about it at sunset. And I looked over at my mom and I was like, I bet you didn't expect that when you had a 30-something-year-old daughter that you would be bathing with each other in the river. I'm pretty sure you've like pictured maybe, going on a holiday to a resort or, doing something that most people do, not like this is our shower is the river and we're going to go sleep on the ground tonight in a tent. And we just giggled about it. So it's like you cannot pay any money for those kinds of memories at all. Like it was an incredible experience.
I absolutely love that so much. I know that my mom loves hiking as well, but she ain't doing that. That's for sure.
Yes, she's not doing that yet.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. Fair. Yeah. She does want to go to Europe and walk around and explore stuff for sure. So we'll start small.
Yeah. Step into it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But that's awesome. So let's talk about the adrenaline stuff. So let's start with the bear stories. Again, more stories that we talked about. And it's funny because if I'm not mistaken, you encountered more bears since the last time I talked to you about bears. So, okay, so we'll include all the bears here. Okay, so
Yeah.
you completed a 120-kilometer boreal trail trek solo and encountered no less than 6 bears, including a mom and a cub. Now, I think that's 2 separate things. I think that was one set of bears, and then this is another. Okay.
There's a lot of bears.
There's a lot of bears. Okay. So what do you do when you run into bears? Like, what did you do when you run into the bears on both occasions? That's question one. And then the other question is, when you're alone in the backcountry and have that many close calls, what is the single most important lesson that maybe Farm Girl Resilience taught you about maintaining focus and controlling fear?
It's always a concern about what you're going to encounter in the wilderness, whether it's bears or moose or, like, honestly, even a skunk chasing you down the trail is scary in the moment you're running from it, because you just don't know. There's an element of the unknown when you have these encounters. And I think the most important thing is to stay calm and not just react. Take a second, because you have time. You have a second to figure out what the next best step should be. I was going to say, thankfully, I've never encountered an aggressive bear, but this summer that's the bear story. You want to remain calm and recognize that if you can remove yourself out of the situation, you can back off of the wildlife or the bear, and you can hopefully dispel the situation that's occurring. Most bears I've encountered, we've seen each other. I back off, I get out of their space in their way, and we go on our way. You can't always control how you're going to encounter them, though, but taking a second to assess where you can move, how you can back up, and how you can react in a way that doesn't make them feel more threatened if they are feeling threatened. Sometimes you just cross paths with each other and you just say, hey, there's a bear, and you carry on. And other times you do have to, like, acknowledge how you want to move in that space. It is definitely more stressful when you are on your own. There's safety in numbers, there's safety in noise as well. And you are usually less likely to see a bear when there's several of you than if you're on your own. I'm so quiet when I'm hiking, so I play music. I call out around corners, especially if I'm biking. You feel silly, but I yell out, hey, bear. And then you come around the corner. And sometimes I was biking in Manitoba. And yeah, the one story, I encountered 7 bears in a day. One of them, I came around the corner on my bike. I'm clipping along at 30 kilometers an hour, but I called out, I'm making noise, and it ran off. And then I did encounter 3 bears in the dark at night by myself. It was a mom and 2 cubs. I couldn't tell until afterwards when I was safe, but essentially it was a triangle of a mom and her 2 cubs, and I walked into it not knowing. So I was walking back to my car. It was well after dark. I had only meant to hop out of my vehicle for 2 minutes, 5 minutes to take some photos. Curiosity got the best of me, and lo and behold, it's after sunset. I had my bear spray with me all day long. I did not have it in this moment. I had my camera and a soft-sided backpack. That was it. And I was walking back to my car, and in the dark, I heard a, like, snuffling, snorting, not a growl, but an aggressive sound of there's a wild animal just to the right of me, and I'm too close to it. So I didn't even have my headlamp with me. I had the light from my cell phone. Again, I was hopping out for 5 minutes. So always carry it, even for 5 minutes. So I swung my cell phone light to the right, and I could see a bear up against a tree, probably, I don't know, 10 meters from me. And I was like, okay, my car is on the other side. I'm going to back up and I'm going to go around this bear and give it tons of space. However, when I started moving towards the left, then I started to hear this, like, growling, huffing, snorting sound to the left of me. And I realized I had walked between 2 bears. So now I can't go right or left. I can go forward or I can go backwards. And I'm not going to go backwards because that gets me closer to the forest and that gets me further from my vehicle, which is the only safe structure in this entire area. So I'm calling out to the bears. I'm letting them know that I know that they're there. I'm swiveling my flashlight, trying to, like, take stock of, are they moving? Are they coming towards me? It's really hard to see with a cell phone flashlight. But I was like, move slow, steady. Every step that you slowly take and cautiously take from the bear is one more towards safety. Also knowing Do not run. Do not incite their desire to chase you, step by step. So I continued walking through the two bears, and I'm getting closer to my vehicle. And there's a tree on the other side of my vehicle on the driver's side. And there is a third bear on the other side of my vehicle. I am literally, I like to jokingly refer to this as the Bermuda Triangle. I am literally in the middle of these three bears. And I was like, I have to go to the driver's side to get in my vehicle because it's a door code because I left my keys in the vehicle. So I'm like, I have to go to this side and get in it. So I managed to walk up to the door of my vehicle, punch in my code. I pulled that door open as fast as I could and like launched myself into the vehicle. And when I had a moment sitting in the car, letting my heart rate come down because it was terrifying, it was very scary, I realized it was a mom and two cubs that I had just walked through completely alone in the dark after hours, nobody else around. Um, Very grateful that it turned out okay, and very grateful that I remained calm through the whole situation. I think that was the difference between ensuring that I could walk through that situation or not in the dark.
Is there ever is there ever a moment during that time when that's happening where you're talking to yourself saying, "Why am I so damn curious? What the hell is why am I here? I'm you know what, this is the last time. I'm never going out again. I'm never going out on these hikes again, ever again." Like is any of those thoughts going through your mind at all?
There is a I will never leave the bear spray behind again thought, especially after I carried it all day. And sometimes you feel silly, like especially if you go out and there's other people on the trail and you've got your bear spray and it's easily accessible and somebody else comes by and they don't have any, like there's this weird social pressure of like, am I doing this right? Am I not? You can never be too careful in the wilderness. And if you feel better carrying bear spray, carry it and don't worry about what anybody else is ever going to say. And I am so regretful that I carried that bear spray all day long. And for 2 minutes, I thought, and I should have known. I saw four bears earlier that day. I should have known. So yeah, there's always lessons to be learned and ways that you can do better next time.
And it's funny because the one time that you decide not to bring the spray is when you actually encounter not just bears, but a bear with their cubs, which is probably the worst situation to probably be in because there's a reason why they have the term mama bear, a reason why that exists. So out of all times to not have the spray like that has to completely be the worst time.
And especially when
So
they're
yeah.
showing signs of aggression and feeling uncomfortable. And it was really interesting. I shared about this on my social media, and somebody had actually been to the same site I was at the night before or the day before. And he sent me pictures of the three bears because I had a hard time seeing them in the dark. And yeah, so there was a mom and two cubs hanging out in this area. And I wish I had known, but more importantly, I wish I had been better prepared.
1000%. And are these black bears or are they yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
they're black bears. So typically black bears tend to be less aggressive. They're usually more scared of you than you are of them. And you usually don't have a really negative experience. But again, you're alone. It's the wilderness and it's wildlife and you just never know.
And I think, I mean, I don't know if this is the same story because you run into more bears than than anyone that I actually know. So was this there was another story that when three bears crossed in front of you, and I think all you had was your axe at that time. Is that true? Because is that when you were actually walking through the boreal forest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
because I remember that story as well.
yes. So this is interesting because I don't just take a step, I dive off the deep end. So the Boreal Trail, it's a 120-kilometer trail, and I was like, why don't I hike this by myself as one of my first ever backpacking overnight like multi-day hiking trips. I'm like, let's do this. 120 kilometers by myself, but let's do it in September during the middle of the week when the park is like kind of closed down for winter, so there's not a lot of people around. And yeah, let's do it like, when the temperatures are dipping below zero. So I was doing this hike by myself. It was one of my first. So I had packed very heavy. I had packed weird things that I would never take. I had a hatchet with me. I had an air horn with me because somebody recommended that in like terms of scaring off the bear. And I knew that bears are common in this area. And I was late getting to my campsite the first night, and I arrived close to sunset, and there was bear scat everywhere. It was all through this campsite. And the campsites are pretty primitive. They have a bear cache to put your backpack or your food or smelly things in it. But then otherwise you pitch your tent wherever you want in the forest. And I was along the cold river, which at this time of year is just a trickle. You could hop, skip, and jump over the rocks. And I knew there's clearly a bear that's been hanging out in this campsite, but I have to pitch my little one-man tent here tonight. And as I was setting up my tent, I looked across the little stream, and there was the bear across from me. That being said, the one thing that made me feel better is he was busy eating the berries, and it was a very good year for berries. So I was hoping I would be okay. And thankfully I was. That night I didn't sleep much, and I had a plus 13 sleeping bag in temperatures that dipped down to about -5 degrees. So not only was it cold, but I was very stressed out. But I woke up the next morning, got the heck out of the campsite. But then 2 days later, as I was hiking on the trail, I went through these really dense hazelnut bushes, and it was a new trail that had just been cut. Not a lot of people had walked on it. And there was some dips that you would come down to, small little creeks and trickles of water passing through. And it was getting on to the end of the day, which wildlife is more active at that time. And I was coming down into one of these dips, and there is a mom and her cub on the trail ahead of me. Now, these bushes are so thick. This isn't a situation where you can just step off the trail and walk into the bush and go around. It's so dense. My only option, I was thinking, is I can either go forward, or I can turn around and hike back out 9 kilometers to where there was an intersecting road with this trail, but that still doesn't get me anywhere. So I was like, okay, stand here, be calm. I'm reaching into the back pocket of my backpack, and I'm like, what should I pull out? What should I do? I grab my air horn, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to blast it. It's going to scare these bears away. I blast it off, and I promise you, not even the ears on these bears twitched. They did not care about my air horn. I'm also playing
Those are damn good berries.
right? I'm also playing music on my phone to try and I was hiking with music so I could be noisier, and that's obviously not scaring them off. And so I was reaching back now to grab, I did have bear spray with me to grab it. And as I was kind of moving and shuffling, my feet moved over onto some of the brush that had been cut and cracked on some of the twigs underneath. And it was that sound that spooked the cub. And the cub ran off into the forest, and the mom followed. But I couldn't, because of my music, I couldn't hear how far they went. And I couldn't see through the dense brush. So I was like, how far off the trail are they? How long do I stand here and wait until I hike past where the bears were standing? Did they go far, or are they just hanging out there? I don't know. So I waited a little bit and then hiked past, and it was okay. And I was okay. So many bears. How many bears is
Oh
too many bears?
Oh, Jesus. I was in Saguenay this summer, and I was at their zoo, which is cool because they have a little train that goes through this big zoo. So I saw a black bear just hanging out. I have to admit, they kind of look cute.
They're
If
so
they're
cute.
sitting, they are. So I mean,
Well, I just want to boob their noses.
exactly. But yeah, but not when they have their cubs, and not when they're eating berries. So
Never.
don't
He never
disturb.
knows boobs. Cubs are even
Yeah.
cuter. I could take one home with me.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, and speaking of extreme self-sufficiency, your adventures include learning to paddle on the Churchill River, where you got tossed from your canoe, and you make a hobby of winter camping in temperatures as low as -40 degrees Celsius. Why? Okay, let me rephrase that better. What is the mental reward you get from conquering a winter environment that most people simply avoid?
It's the challenge of it, and knowing that you can do it, and it's okay, and it's not as bad as you think. And actually, I take my nephews winter camping. We build quinzees, which are piles of snow that you hollow out, kind of like a snow fort. And last winter, it was -40, and we made a quinzee, and we all slept overnight in it. There was me and my partner and 2 of my nephews. So I know this stuff sounds crazy, but I promise you, if you're interested and if you are willing to take the time to learn the skills, It's all possible and it's all doable. And when it comes to winter, a good pair of boots and ski pants and good like insulated clothing is the difference between having a really awesome time outside in the snow and having a very miserable experience.
It's funny you mentioned that because, I'm not gonna lie. Obviously, I'm Caribbean, so we're used to the warmer climes. But for the longest time, I would always wear like one of those stupid little thin winter coats, like the puff ones that say it's good under -40, but really it looks like the Michelin Man jacket, but it's black. Um, and I would wear that, and I'd have like a million layers. I'd be like, I hate winter. I hate it. I hate it so much because I'm always cold. And then I invested in like an actual parka and snow pants and proper hats and gloves. And now I absolutely love winter. Like it's no different than being in any other. I mean, I would still prefer summer because I'm a bear and patio kind of guy. Bear and patio, not bear and patio kind of guy. No, but yeah, I completely understand because in Quebec last year we were in Mont Tremblant and I was completely ice climbing and doing all these things because I had my snow pants and my winter coat and I could stay outside like all day and I was completely fine. So to your point, I'm not scared of winter anymore and I don't dislike it. And that's all because of just dressing for it. And it's just as beautiful in the winter. Everything looks different. And I think it's absolutely stunning when it's wintertime.
And one of my favorite things about winter camping is there are no mosquitoes.
1000%. There's no mosquitoes, there's nobody else.
That's also true. And that's the thing is you can access like winter accessible campgrounds and you're the only one out there. Or there might be one other person out there, but then you end up chatting with them because you're two
Mhm.
crazy people out camping in the snow.
1000%. And the same thing goes for hiking the trails. Like, there's not a lot of people on the trails when it's winter. And I find the trails absolutely beautiful with snow when they're snow covered. So there is that. Now, just quick thing, like you got tossed from the canoe. So what happened when you got tossed from the canoe? Just wanted to touch on that for a second.
Yeah, so that's in northern Saskatchewan, we have access to some amazing waterways, some of the best whitewater canoeing in the country, and it's just such a fun playground, but it is really remote. And you do go out there and you go out for multiple days. But you go out prepared as best you can for any situation that comes along because you don't always have control. So when you get tossed out of a canoe, the most important thing is knowing to either how to get to shore safely or how to get back into your canoe. Again, depending on the setup, if you're in a lake or on a river, if there's other people with you, or if you're by yourself with just a canoe partner. And then another big concern too is your equipment and what happens if it gets washed downstream. So again, where those bear barrels that we were talking about early come into play is they do float and they're waterproof. So you put all of your gear and clothing in and food in a bear barrel, or you do also have big waterproof backpacks that you can pack everything into. So the biggest thing is just when you flip in a canoe, you never let go of your paddle. You make sure you are aware of the situation. You get your feet up so you can, if you're on a river, you can float down with your feet up. And then you just want to be aware of where the shore is, where you can grab onto, because sometimes you're going through rapids. There's lots of rocks and trees in the water. There could be a little drop that's further down the river. There's lots of risks to it. Paddling whitewater scares me, even after taking courses and training and getting out on the water. And I think part of the reason is it scares me is I need to do more training. I need to spend more time out there, build my skills up better, become more comfortable. But that's the great part is there's a really beautiful canoeing culture in northern Saskatchewan. And they even do a whitewater festival every June, July that you can go out to and work on your skills and then meet other like-minded people too. So it can be scary and it can be very dangerous, but working on your skills can help mediate any risk, even when things do go sideways.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. That's good. I like that. Okay. I wanted to talk about the potash mine. So I remember you were sharing this story during our press trip, and as part of a partnership, you visited the nutrient potash mine and traveled 1 kilometer underground to see the mining face and actually touch raw potash ore. Then you ended up setting off a security alarm at a major airport due to residue on your gear. So, walk us through that moment. What did the security agents suspect you were carrying? And how did you explain that the source of the alert was actually trace residue from a Saskatchewan fertilizer operation?
So, oh man, I shut down the whole security area. Like, I don't just mean my security line, I shut down every security line. I was flying from Saskatoon to New York, and this is when I was leaving Toronto to fly into New York. I was with my family actually, and I had gone through first. But even worse on top of this is such a ridiculous story. I had the dreaded SSSS on my boarding pass. So when they put that on your boarding pass, you're automatically flagged for like extra security measures. So this was going south no matter what. But yeah, so I was flagged for this extra security. So you have to take everything out. They're just like extra diligent with everything. And then I went through and they were swabbing all my stuff. And then like an alarm went off and it came up with, thankfully the guy was pretty good about talking to me about it because some of them were not friendly, the border control agents. It came up with RDX, which I had to Google this afterwards, but it's an explosive. And the most complicated part of all of this was trying to figure out, well, where did this come from? And trying to explain my job to the border control agent. So this was about a month after I had been down in that potash mine. And so they obviously use explosives in the area for like, I don't even actually know completely how, but like you're obviously building out different sections of the mine. Um, and I really don't know, but I was trying to explain to him that, you know, I'm a travel writer and a content creator, and some of my work has recently taken me down into this potash mine. And he's like, "So you're a journalist?" And I was like, no, because I'm also flying into the United States and I don't want to get flagged as a journalist because although it's the US, you just have to be careful sometimes too. And I was like, "No, I usually write about the outdoors." An adventure. So then he's like, "Well, why were you in a potash mine?" And I was like, "Well, I have a contract for the company back at home. We're celebrating their 65th anniversary." And it was so he couldn't understand the kind of work that I was doing. But I also didn't want to claim to work in a potash mine because it was a media trip. It's not my job. So that was very confusing. And now while all of this is happening, I have stopped every line in the security area and people are getting mad. There's a guy who was coming through behind me on the other side. He was calling for like the manager because he was going to miss his flight and he needed to go through his security line. And my line wasn't his line. And so there was that tension and I'm standing there not knowing what to do. But I had the same camera and I don't know if I had the same backpack, but I had the same gear that I had taken underground. So it was a very interesting experience. It worked out okay, as all my stories seem to somehow work out okay. But yeah, I didn't expect that.
Oh my gosh, I love that story. I remember you sharing it. Um, so a couple of things. You're probably the reason why all my camera gear gets swabbed now. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
Maybe. While we're on it, like, what was exploring the mine like?
Honestly, it was so cool. Like, how many times in your life do you have an opportunity to go over a kilometer underground, right? It was really neat to see. I was surprised at how well lit it is underground. Like, obviously, you have your headlamps, but they do have lights set up. You have little vehicles, electric vehicles to drive around because it's massive. Like, these mines run for dozens of kilometers in all directions. They have little workstations set up. And it was very salty. So the salt just kind of hangs in the air. It's a dust on like a windy, dusty day. And so you're driving around and you just feel the particles hitting your face and you come up and potash has a very specific smell to it. Actually, my partner happens to work in an underground potash mine and he comes home every day and I can smell the potash on like his lunch kit and his backpack. And it's really incredible to think that we're able to access so far under the Earth's surface, and people work down there every day. It's pretty unique.
That's amazing. So basically, don't travel with you or your partner because both of you guys will be setting off alarms. But speaking of your partner, before we before I ask you the last question, um, what is he thinking when you are out in these places, like, walking down 120 kilometer hike in the boreal forest, or I mean, at least in the sand dunes, like you were with your mom, but like what goes through his mind when you are doing these kind of things? Because if it were me, I'd be losing my shit.
He's so chill about it all. He comes with me on some adventures. He's quite adventurous too. He loves to do these things as well. So he's been on canoeing, and although when you ask him about his first winter camping experience, he does like to talk about how cold it was and the fact that I slept with, like, I think I had onions. I had some vegetables with me. I slept with the onions in my sleeping bag so they wouldn't freeze at night. It's the only way. You have to keep food warm in the winter instead of cold like you do in the summer. But he's really supportive. He knows how adventurous I am. Sometimes though, he'll be like, "Don't do that." And I'm like shocked, saying, "What do you mean? Like, I can do whatever I want. I always have. You can't tell me not to stand this close to the edge of a cliff that I could fall off of." So occasionally it sneaks in to some of the moments. But otherwise he's honestly pretty supportive. He loves outdoor adventure too, so he gets it, which is nice.
I mean, it's cool, but I mean, like when you're going places where he can't reach you, like, do you know what I mean? Because there's no cell phone signal. So you're saying that he's not even remotely concerned?
I don't think so. Like, he's never said anything to me about it. I think he just trusts the adventures that I get up to. He knows that I'm very capable, and as much as we joke about all these crazy things that have happened, um I do take safety very seriously. Backup plans, I carry a Garmin in reach now. I never used to, but I have it now. Even cell phones, you can access the satellite and reach out to people. And then I do things to ensure my safety in the backcountry. I have my wilderness 40-hour certification that I recert every 3 years. I go take courses so I can build my skill set. Again, it doesn't stop bad things from happening sometimes, but I mean, life is no fun living it from the couch. You have to get out, you have to go explore, and you have to push your limits. That's the beautiful part of being human.
1000%. And I know, like, we're joking about the stories, but I know that you know what you're doing. So it's not like you
Most
don't.
of the time, or I'm learning it. I'm learning it very quickly.
That's hilarious. But it actually leads into the final question. So let's see here. You've climbed mountains over 6,000 meters and navigated areas with avalanches and erupting volcanoes, and even flew in a military jet with the Canadian Forces snowboards for fun, which was pretty cool as a story. We're going to talk about that in another episode, which is why I can't wait to bring you back. But reflecting on all the things that you've done, what was the moment when you felt like you were really pushing past a limit you thought was set in stone?
I think that came when I did 5 years of university, and then I spent 5 years traveling in the world. And I would have people close to me in my life ask me when I was going to settle down and start real life, or when I was going to get a real job. And those are really difficult things to hear from people who love you the most. And I get it, because they just care about you and they want to ensure that you're setting yourself up for a good life. But I knew that's when I was doing things that were more unconventional than most people. But I had a plan, I had a purpose for the short term, right? I mean, I didn't know where my life was going to go. And I just think if I hadn't taken that first solo trip, I wouldn't be where I am today. I would be a completely different person. I wouldn't have the skills, the confidence, the knowledge, the flexibility, able to, adjust and pivot to all sorts of situations if I hadn't taken that first trip. So it's a cliche that, travel will change your life, but cliches are cliches because they're true. I have become such a wonderful version of myself that I didn't even know existed because of travel and being open and curious to different cultures and the world, and just different ways people live, and how I can incorporate that into my own life.
I love that answer because I 1000% agree with you. Okay. Having visited 60 countries and all 7 continents, you could have based your career anywhere, yet you remain a passionate advocate for all the world-class experiences in Saskatchewan. So, if you could distill the entire Lost Girls Guide philosophy in one sentence for someone who is inspired by your story, because if you're not inspired by now, then I don't know what's happening, but hasn't yet started their own adventure, what would that be? And I think you sort of already alluded to it.
I would say be scared, be nervous, but be curious and go do it anyway.
I love it. You rock. Ashlyn, thank you so much for hanging out. This was so much fun.
Oh, thank you so much.
What an incredible and inspiring conversation. If you were inspired by her resilience and running into 6 bears on the Boreal Trail to extreme camping and hiking in the Athabasca sand dunes, you can find Ashlyn's work and all her travel guides at her website, thelostgirlsguide.com. We'll link to it in the description. Until next time, stay rudderless.